Welcome back to another episode. Today we're going to take a closer in. Welcome back to another episode. Today, Nvidia has dropped to $100. Earlier today was pretty much a market meltdown where the stock dropped to in the low 90s. Obviously, within a few hours, so much has changed. But on today's episode, I want to take a closer look at more updates we're getting about semiconductor delays and just my overall thoughts as a long-term investor of Nvidia. Obviously, there's a lot of bearish cases impacting the overall stock, but let's just save it for the rest of the episode. So let's get started.
I want to thank The Motley Fool for sponsoring this video, and check out fool.com/Jose for the 10 best stocks to buy now. With that link, you get a promotional offer for their subscription service. Now, let's continue with today's episode.
All right, so we can see Nvidia today was down roughly 6%. Year to date, though, the stock is still up 107%. And if you are familiar with this channel, you guys know I'm super bullish on Nvidia. When I do look at recent news or any news on a daily basis, I try to take both the bearish and bullish approach. And yesterday I ended up doing an episode on the chip delay. And unfortunately, it makes it seem like I'm bearish towards Nvidia, but that's not necessarily the case. I just want to bring up the data to everybody. So today we do have some more updates on this chip delay. And obviously Nvidia has kind of disputed this based on calling it rumors. But like I mentioned in yesterday's episode, I think there's a mixture of truth behind some of these delay talks. And today we actually got more information. We're seeing so many more articles after Semi-Analysis, which is a huge semiconductor analyst groups, and they provide a lot of information about the AI accelerator market. They do a lot of boots on the ground discussions and finding out information. And recently they just announced that, hey, look, the Blackwell is actually encountering some major issues according to the Semi-Analysis, which will impact production targets through the first half of 2025. Later throughout this episode, I'm going to kind of share my overall thoughts, but first I just want to showcase what we are seeing right now. And based on this kind of reports that we're hearing from Semi-Analysis and this article here in Tweaktown, is that the main problem from Nvidia's Blackwell GPU architecture are in the chip packaging market, which is the CoWoS L. CoWoS L is different from what Nvidia is using on the H100, which is CoWoS S. So Semi-Analysis has explained that the main issue affecting here the packaging is caused by this new advanced packaging that TSMC is kind of doing, and it's more complex, and it's creating something that's called warpage on the substrate. And this is something that we have talked a little bit about here and there in other episodes, and how there are certain companies that are working on a different type of substrate masking that can help with things like that, but we'll save that for another episode. But pretty much Semi-Analysis seems that this is where the major issue is happening, and it has created some form of redesign process happening for Nvidia and the Blackwell solution. And because of this redesign, and it seems like maybe the redesign isn't as crazy, but it definitely needs some time to kind of go through, because a full redesign of a chip like this would take probably multi quarters for it to happen. But the redesign is just pushing kind of Blackwell volumes till maybe later half, pushing it by a few months, 3 months, maybe a quarter or two, and really kind of starting to see volume in the first half, or in the first half of 2025. And yesterday when I did this video, I did mention that Nvidia did respond, right? And they stated the following: Hopper is very strong, broad Blackwell sampling has started, and production is on track to ramp in the second half. Beyond that, we don't comment on rumors. If these chip delays are true, and I personally do believe both are true, Semi-Analysis has provided some great information here, it does seem like production is still expected to come out at least in the second half. So I don't think Nvidia is lying, and at the same time we still have strong demand for Hopper. Now with this new updated information, we are seeing more analysts come out with maybe some changes or their overall thoughts on the company. We did see that Bank of America does believe that Nvidia is at compelling prices. They see any sell-off as an enhanced buying opportunities, as challenges are not in demand but in solvable supply that will not fundamentally derail Nvidia's long-term momentum. Luckily, this morning we did get some analyst price targets from firms that I'm not pretty much familiar with, but we can see ITO BBA adjusted their price target on Nvidia to 165 from 130, so bullish there. BNP adjusted their price target on Nvidia from 145 to 120. We also saw some updates from Citi, and Citi reduced their 2025 estimates for Nvidia. I believe the actual estimate reduction was only by 5%, so nothing crazy, and they removed the shares from its 30-day catalyst watch. I don't know if that was the smart move, as earnings is happening in less than 30 days, and that can actually be a huge catalyst for Nvidia. Regardless, they kept their price target at $150, and they still mentioned that there's still strong demand for the H100 and H200, which could mitigate any risk from these delays that can potentially happen with Blackwell. So overall, we still are seeing analysts very bullish for the company. There were a lot of other analysts that did come out today. We can see Bernstein analyst Stacy Ragson, which mentions that this article is now plausible given recent other news flow regarding potentially near-term roadmap shifts. So I do believe Semi-Analysis, like I mentioned, is a huge semiconductor firm. If you are inside the semiconductor industry, you're very familiar with them, and they do usually provide some great information. So it's giving more evidence that there is some truth behind it. Now he mentions that there's no panicking just yet. At the minimum, despite recent worries over AI return on investment, it remains clear that demand levels continue to rise, with all major hyperscalers continuing to grow their capital expenditure outlooks, as well as talk up the rationale behind their business plan. So this Bernstein analyst makes a lot of sense, right? I'm pretty sure if there is some truth to these delays or redesigns, all the hyperscaler computer companies would have known about this. Amazon would have known this, Microsoft would have known this, Meta would have known this. All the big customers are going to know this because it's going to suck if they learn it at the last minute. So if it is true, all these know about it. And if it is true, all of them already said that they're increasing their AI spending. So they're most likely going to continue to buy plenty of H100s and H200s as they're going to continue to grow in this AI space. Raymond James analysts did mention that they expect any potential delays in Blackwell to drive upside Hopper demand in the short term, which could actually benefit gross margins, and I'll talk about that in a bit. A few months delay should have limited impact on Nvidia's near-term estimates. The main reason, right, they mentioned that they believe Hopper will be able to pick up any slack there, and given the company's track record on execution, he and his teams have no reason to doubt the Blackwell ramp. So two things there, right? So obviously, if these are true, we keep hearing from analysts that Hopper is going to continue to pick up that demand. The second thing that we heard there is they mentioned that Hopper can actually increase margins in the short term of things. The reason being is Hopper actually uses the CoWoS S, which is a less advanced packaging than CoWoS L, so in theory the margins there should be even better. The other thing I want to mention is a lot of these companies are saying in the long term there shouldn't really be any form of impact. I want to say that's because right now there's no real competition that can really take market share from Nvidia, even if these delays are real. The only one competing with Nvidia in development at the moment is Nvidia itself. So Nvidia is the only one that can fight Nvidia at these levels, where the H200 is the only thing that will be able to compete against Nvidia's Blackwell demand. Then we did see Citi analysts, like we talked about, facing these Blackwell delays. If true, he foresees some customer increasing their demand of H100, H200, which should help Nvidia partially offset the decline in Blackwell sales. But he cuts his estimates for the current January ending fiscal year by 5%, and he echoed that the view that a delay could help AMD as a second source. So obviously it could help other companies grow a little bit, but you're not going to lose demand for Nvidia solutions. So I do have this quick power presentation. I want to kind of share my overall thoughts, right? First, I just wanted to see what other analysts were saying. Now I want to share my overall thoughts. If it's true, how will it impact revenue? In the short term, I think obviously Blackwell revenue expectations may drop. But like most of these analysts say, and I agree, the H100 and H200 will pick up any slack in demand as there is little choice in the competition space. I also know that the price of the Blackwell versus the Hopper isn't very different. It isn't very different from reports. I do believe they're both closer to that around 40,000 range. Obviously, prices depend differently on who the customers are and how much they're buying, but I do believe the prices are not a big difference. H100 and H200, like I previously mentioned, use CoWoS L and CoWoS S and not CoWoS L, which should be cheaper and could potentially help margins. It might slightly benefit companies like AMD, Broadcom, and Marvell as they are or have some form of alternative solution. In my opinion, no real bearish case. In the short term, though, the only real bearish case that I might see is the sentiment, and this sentiment can create strong buying prices. So if I was an Nvidia investor, really wouldn't worry about it, but it doesn't mean that other investors and the stock price is gonna be all amazing. At these levels, Nvidia at $100, in my opinion, is definitely great buying opportunities. And obviously, because of the sentiment, we can even get better buying opportunities. So if one wants to enter into this AI king, I would say it's all up to you. But I personally wouldn't put all at once because buying opportunities do come through random events like this and other macroeconomic events that happen all over the world. Now, in the long term of things, this is my overall thoughts. Blackwell would do great and still be an amazing product for Nvidia, even if it's pushed down a few quarters. If they have to do redesign, as analysts have said, it might just allow competitors to spit out the narrative that could be seen as a bearish case, right? AMD, I want to say, can come out and say, hey, look, man, you guys are trusting Nvidia, but Nvidia has to do redesigns and stuff like that. Why don't you go with our products instead? So I want to say that could be something that other companies might end up pushing later on. I also want to say the industry's annual cadence may be a bit hectic as it relies on so many technologies to evolve at the same pace, right? It's not just Nvidia that needs to accelerate. From we see if these delays are real, it's mainly happening from TSMC's packaging side. And there's other solutions that need to evolve as AI accelerators evolve, like HBM solutions. So the memory company needs to continue to innovate. The optic solutions needs to continue to innovate. So it's not an Nvidia problem, but a semiconductor problem. So I want to say, is this annual cadence really something that's gonna happen? Or are we learning that, hey, look, maybe a year and a half or maybe 2 years is where we need to go back? Long-term bull, no changes in thesis as AI, in my opinion, will change the world from healthcare, advertisement, entertainment, information, robotics, driving, education, and the list goes on. And NVIDIA is going to be the sole leader here, especially with their full infrastructure, software, hardware, and all their clouding solutions as well. The biggest bearish case here, in my opinion, that I see is it forces big tech to continue to invest in their own in-house solutions, right? Because they will see this dependency of NVIDIA as a risk if more futures arise, right? As a big tech company, if I'm Google, if I'm Microsoft, if I'm OpenAI, if I'm whoever, I'm gonna say, hey, look, what if future generations come out with some issues? We can't have our dependency solely on NVIDIA, so we have to make sure to continue to invest in our semiconductor solutions, even if right now we're not really a competitor in this space. Regardless, like I mentioned, this issue that we're seeing for NVIDIA isn't necessarily an NVIDIA issue. It's more of a semiconductor technology is evolving at such a rapid pace that there could be any issues in any of these industries, like I mentioned, the memory, the manufacturing, the optics, the connections, the list goes on and on. But overall, still very bullish. So final thoughts, still very bullish on NVIDIA and the AI market. As mentioned previously, one of my biggest risks was a supply chain issue, which is what we're seeing. Sentiments may drive stock prices down and create random buying opportunities, but as a long-term investor, I am not worried. I would love to hear your final thoughts. What are your thoughts right now? Take care, have a good day, and see you next time.